my audience can find you?
Sure. I'm so happy to be back and chatting with you again. My name is Tonia Winchester, officially Dr. Tonia Winchester. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I've been in practice for about 17 years now. And in addition, the last couple of years, I've been really focusing on some new work, mind, body, healing coaching. And what I love to do with people is help to get any kind of pain from the past, traumas, old emotions that haven't been fully processed out of the bodies, out of the minds, out of the hearts, so that we can be primed to be present, kind, caring, compassionate, and all the things that we need to bring into relationships. We can be easily and effortlessly. Oh, and where to find.
Perfect.
Oh.
Go ahead. No, tell. That's the most important part, right? Where can they find Dr. Tonia?
ToniaWinchester.com is the best place. That's Tonia Winchester.com. That's actually where people can find my book, Breakthrough the Insomnia Cycle, and other helpful ideas there. So that's a really good starting place.
Perfect. Perfect. So I know I shared that I have a few friends who are going through some difficult times with their marriages. Some looks like it's falling apart. Some it's like the end of the world. Some are trying to hold on to hot girl summer. They're just trying to figure it all out, right? So take us from the very beginning. What are some of the ways that you're helping people mend their relationships and to understand maybe what has gone wrong and what can go right in the future?
Yeah. Well, first, I would say that nothing ever goes wrong. And what I mean by that is anytime we're behaving in relationship with someone else, we're trying to have a need met, some deep, often unconscious, underlying need that we're trying to have fulfilled. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, sometimes the way that we do that, because it's so automated, so unconscious, we're not aware of how we're behaving, what our triggers are, what causes us to react, what causes us to be hurt, what causes us to be resentful. We sort of go through these experiences in our relationships, not really being fully in charge of our own responses. It's like someone else is driving the bus, and we blame and we point fingers and we find fault. And really, at the root of it, we're just all trying to be loved. And maybe that's hard to get that love from that person or feel like they are loving you in the way that you want to be loved because of things that happened often when you were so young that you weren't able to kind of process them. So there's these old wounds that haven't healed, and that changes how our unconscious mind experiences and reacts to the world. That's where I love helping people, is being able to change those old stories of pain from the past so that they can actually be, I mentioned these words just a few minutes ago, but calm and kind, and really choose responses and really be loving with people versus just sort of reactive. It's a whole different way of experiencing your relationships.
What about for the person that they've had bad experience after bad experience and they're trying to understand, is it them
Mm.
or is it me? And I'll give you an example. In my 20s, I couldn't date successfully and healthy to save my life. And I always thought that it was everyone else. It was the world against terrain, right? Which a lot of people have experienced. But I did something that I don't think enough people do is I looked inside
Yeah.
and I said, am I ready to date with success? Am I ready to date with good intentions? And I realized that I wasn't at that point in time for whatever my reasons, right? And then I had to figure it out. What type of woman do I want? Am
Mm-hmm.
I the type of man that they would want? And what are their expectations? And I look at some of my friends who are struggling with the dating,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're saying that, you know what, it's Tanya's fault.
Mm-hmm.
She's this, she's this, she's
Absolutely.
this. It's not my fault. And they bring that, what I would call luggage
Yep.
of the past, the sins of the father, the sins of the mother, right? When you
Definitely.
mention the childhood, and they
Yeah.
bring it to other relationships. When you're hearing some of these stories that they go through, how do you start that conversation by saying, have you thought of this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important for people to understand and keep reminding themselves that anytime they're making any sort of judgment on anything outside of themselves, it's actually just a reflection of something that's deep inside that they're not acknowledging. Freud called this the shadow, right? Jung and Freud, they would have expressed this as that shadow, but it's not, and it's not necessarily all bad. It's just stuff that we're not aware of. If someone's pointing at me saying like, this is your fault because you're XYZ, maybe I am those things, but that's actually not what's important. What's important is how the person is responding to however I am behaving. Again, my behaviors are just trying to meet and fulfill some sort of need. So maybe I'll share an example if this is okay with my own marriage. This is a really interesting story. I'm very extroverted and I love people, and I get a lot of value from outside feedback. And my husband, on the flip, super introverted, totally internally referenced. He doesn't give a darn hoot about what is going on around him or what people think about him. It's actually quite admirable as a recovering people pleaser. But and here's the difference to this point of just sort of the idea that we're interpreting how other people are behaving and making it mean something about ourselves. So I was getting a photo shoot for some new photos for my website. And I had a lot of outfits that I wanted to bring to this photo shoot because I wanted to have, different looks, right? And I had four bags of stuff packed by the back door, ready to go. And he comes out of his shop and he just goes, wow, that's a lot of bags. And I kind of started to do a social experiment in that moment. I was like, yep. And he asked me zero questions, not where I'm going, how long I'm going for, who I'm going with, what I'm doing there, when I'm expected to be back, no further questions. And I was like, so interesting, because he's just so internally referenced. Now, some people would interpret this as being really hurtful, really personal. He doesn't love me. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't this, he doesn't XYZ. I just know that this is how he operates in the world. So I go have the photo shoot. I'm actually out for the night. I come home, he's already in bed. Over breakfast the next morning, he goes, so how was all of that? He has no idea what he's asking about, right? He's like, so how was all of that? And I just, again, social experiment, I was like, good, no further questions. And so this was a really interesting moment, because had I not gone through the healing that I've gone through, I would have probably in that moment been so mad, so hurt, so disappointed. And yet I was like, this is so cute. Like, this is exactly who this person is. He doesn't need to ask me those types of questions for me to know that he loves me. And there's so much safety in that. Now, later, maybe 3 months or 4 months after this had happened, we were out with friends, and I'm sharing this story of how interesting I think this is. And because I'm so fascinated by this moment where people make decisions for themselves, I'm like, oh, I get so into these like psychological, why are you behaving that way? What purpose is that behavior kind of trying to get you fulfilled? Anyway, so I'm telling this story, and after I share it, and everyone's kind of laughing because they all know my husband. They all like, it's just so funny. He's like, well, here I am seeing all these bags, not having a clue if she'd already told me what she was doing. And I didn't want to show up and be like, I've totally forgotten what you told me and I missed the boat. I'm so sorry. So he just stayed quiet. All of this to say that when we are pointing fingers outside of ourselves, we are making an interpretation about what someone's behavior is meaning about us. And it never really is about us. We get to, as human beings with intention and consciousness, get to decide how we interpret things. So when people are pointing fingers and saying, you're this, you're that, you're XYZ, you're making it mean something. And that's why you're hurting. You're making it mean something. So I challenge people. I'll often challenge my clients to write a list of 7 other ways you can interpret that person's behavior. What are 7 other things that could mean? 1 or 2 is easy, 3 or 4 is tricky, and 5, 6, 7 are challenging to come up with those other examples. But when you do that, you start to have this compassion in your heart that never existed before. It's like, oh, maybe he used that tone of voice because he had a really crap day at work, and that has nothing to do with me. Maybe that person cut in front of me in traffic because they're racing to get their mother to the hospital. Like, who knows, right? This allows us to give people the benefit of the doubt that really everybody is trying to just be good and have needs fulfilled.
I think that's a fantastic point, because you don't know truly what the actions of someone or the lack thereof,
Yeah.
what that truly means. I know, and there's some people that I've dated, if they were to see me with my bags packed, they'd be like, who you're going with, where you're going, when you're
Yeah,
going to be home, you're
sure.
leaving me, you're cheating,
Yeah,
right? They would have created multiple realities
totally. Yeah.
in their head. And sometimes like the worst one is a person who creates it and says nothing.
Yeah.
They just sit and they're like, okay, when she comes home, it's on, right?
Right, 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 right.
Right. They're in the
They've been
chair that's
stewing.
pointed to the door, right? And it's brewing inside them. And I wish if there was a way that we can just understand and give each other, as you mentioned, the benefit of the doubt, because this is someone that, and I'll take it away from you now and I'll make it more general. This is someone that you're intimate with on a number of levels, right? It could be mentally, it could be emotionally, it could even be physically. This is someone you spend a lot of time with. This is someone you trust your mind with, your emotions, as well as your body.
Yeah.
So I think the intention should be good. And I think the benefit, as you mentioned, give them the benefit of the doubt until you have reasons to do so. Is that something in your experience that is difficult for people to do in relationships?
Yes, 100% it is. And that comes back to that unconscious programming of what is automatically driving our bus inside of our brains and minds. We, since we're just running programs. And so it's really hard to interrupt those programs and stop and try to respond differently. And until we do change work, I mean, there's so many ways to climb a mountain and do that change work. But the result when you do that type of neurological, psychological reprogramming is you get this pause moment where previously you would have reacted in a certain way, but now you get to take a breath and decide with intention what is the most productive, helpful, caring, kind response in this moment. That is really transformational when people are able to do that. And it's just as simple, like it's a microsecond. It doesn't need to be minutes, hours, days of time, just a pause that is like, oh, actually, this is the best way here. Not that there's ever necessarily a best way, but the most productive, helpful, caring, like I said.
What are some of the commonalities that prevent us from reaching that point, in your opinion?
Yeah, trauma for sure. Especially stuff that happened when we were young. And it doesn't need to be big T trauma, you know, it can be just the conditioning of how we were raised. And it can be something as simple as a child wanting to be held and being left in a crib. Like those small things add up inside our neurology and make us believe certain things about ourselves. Again, we're making interpretations at this point in our life, though, when we're so young, we don't have the brain development to say like, oh, you know what? It's okay. My mom still loves me, even though she couldn't hold me in that exact moment. But we make it mean things about ourselves. I'm not lovable. I'm not valuable. I'm not worthy. And then those beliefs become so pervasive inside our unconscious mind that they drive all our behavior automatically. So it's really hard to recognize it when we're stuck in those patterns because they are that. They're just automations.
For those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and my social media and my website, please subscribe, share, and like for more incredible videos and interviews like the one I have with my current, not new, current best friend, Tonia. And we will be back for more. So